From riches to rags, the legend of Robin Hood.
Well met, friend. I see you've come to hear a tale or two. Pull up a seat by the fire and I'll tell you about a time when the forests of Sherwood were home to more than just the deer and the trees. You've likely heard my name. Robin Hood, they call me. Some say I'm an outlaw, a thief even, but those are just words thrown about by men who'd rather keep their coffers full while the good folk of England starve. Me? I'm just a man with a bow and a bit of mischief in my heart, looking to set things right where the law has failed. You see, I wasn't always the leader of this merry band of misfits. No, there was a time when I walked the straight and narrow, a life as dull as ditch water. But that all changed the day I realised that there's no justice to be found in the courts and castles of the rich. So, I took to the forest, where the trees are tall, the air is fresh, and the rules are what you make of them. Now, don't let them fool you. Being an outlaw isn't just about robbing the rich and sharing the spoils. There's a bit more to it than that. You've got to be quick with your wits and quicker with your feet. The Sheriff of Nottingham would love nothing more than to see my head on a pike. But as long as I've got my bow and my merry men by my side, I reckon I'll keep him disappointed. So, where shall we begin? Perhaps with the time I met Little John, or maybe how I first crossed paths with that devil of a sheriff. Or better yet, let's start at the very beginning. The day I first realised that the only way to fight injustice was to live outside the law. What do you say, friend? Are you ready for a tale of daring and defiance? Well now, you might wonder how a man like me, with a bow in hand and a price on his head, came to be. Truth is, I wasn't always living beneath the green boughs of Sherwood, dodging the sheriff's men at every turn. No, there was a time when I walked the halls of a grand manor, a life of privilege, some might say, but not without its burdens. You see, I was born as Robert of Loxley, heir to the earldom of Huntingdon. My father, the Earl, was a man of honour and strong principles. From him, I learned the ways of the court, the weight of responsibility, and the power of loyalty. But my father wasn't just a lord, he was also a man of the land, a skilled huntsman who could track a stag through the thickest forest. He'd take me along on those hunts, through the mists of dawn and the golden light of dusk, teaching me not just how to draw a bow, but how to understand the world around me. He'd say, "Robin, the forest is a living thing. Respect it, and it will shelter you. Mistreat it, and it will turn on you as surely as any man." Those were lessons I took to heart, more than any courtly rule or noble duty. I was a noble by birth, yes, but in spirit I was a yeoman comfortable in the wild, more at ease with the rustle of leaves than the whispers of courtiers. The woods around Loxley were my true home, where the air was fresh and the rules were simpler. I knew every tree, every stream, every hidden path. There's a certain freedom in the forest that no manor or title could ever offer. I was a man with a bow, a man with a love for the wild and the free, long before I ever became an outlaw. But life has a way of changing, doesn't it? It wasn't long before the peace I knew was shattered. The troubles began when King Richard, God bless him, left England for the Holy Land, leaving his brother, Prince John, to rule in his stead. Now, Prince John, he's a man with a taste for power and a hunger for gold, and he surrounded himself with men just as greedy and ruthless. Men like the Sheriff of Nottingham, that snake, saw an opportunity in Richard's absence. He set his sights on the lands of the nobility, seizing what he could under the guise of the crown. When he came for Loxley, he didn't come alone. He brought with him a host of false charges, accusations that would make your blood boil with their absurdity. They claimed we were traitors, that we'd withheld taxes due to the crown and worse. But I knew what they were really after: land, wealth, power. My father, God rest his soul, tried to fight it in the courts, believing that justice would prevail. But the law is a twisted thing when it's in the hands of men like the sheriff. They took everything: my title, my lands, my home, gone in a heartbeat. But worse still, they took my father's life. Not with a sword or an arrow, but with the weight of their treachery, the endless parade of false witnesses and corrupt judges. He was a man of honour, and to see his life's work torn away by men without a shred of decency, it broke him. That was the day I swore I'd never bow to men like the sheriff again. I became an outlaw, not because I wanted to, but because there was no other way to fight back. They drove me to the woods, but in doing so, they gave me the one thing they feared most: a man with nothing to lose and everything to fight for. Sherwood Forest, the very heart of England. It's a place of ancient trees and hidden glades where the light filters through the leaves like a promise. When I fled to Sherwood, I wasn't alone. There were others who'd been wronged by the sheriff, men who'd lost their homes, their families, all at the hands of Prince John's lackeys. We found each other in the depths of the forest, bound together by a shared sense of injustice and a will to survive. At first, we were little more than a band of fugitives hiding from the law, living off what we could hunt or scavenge. But Sherwood had its own way of moulding men. We learned to move like shadows, to use the land to our advantage. The forest provided for us, sheltering us from the sheriff's prying eyes. We started small, a raid here, a trap set there. Every victory, no matter how small, gave us hope, gave us purpose. We knew the land better than any of the sheriff's men. We used that knowledge to strike quickly and disappear just as fast. We became outlaws, yes, but we were also free, freer than any man in a castle or court. The trees became our walls, the streams our moats. Sherwood was no longer just a forest, it was our fortress. And so began the life of Robin Hood, the outlaw, not by choice but by necessity. We were men who had lost everything to injustice, but in the forest we found a new purpose: to fight back, to protect those who could not protect themselves, and to bring a bit of justice to a land that had forgotten its meaning. Now life in Sherwood wasn't all about running and hiding. No, we had our fair share of laughs and triumphs, even in those early days. It wasn't long before I realised that alone, one man and some outlaw villagers couldn't take on the sheriff and his lot. So I started keeping an eye out for those who might share my cause, men with the strength and courage to stand up against injustice, who knew the value of loyalty and who weren't afraid to live outside the law. It was on one of those days, deep in the heart of Sherwood, that I first crossed paths with the man who would become my right hand, Little John. Now, let me tell you, the name Little doesn't quite fit. John stood taller than most men, broad-shouldered and strong as an ox. I'd heard tales of him, a yeoman from the north, skilled with a quarterstaff, and as stubborn as the day is long. We met on a narrow bridge, neither of us willing to step aside. There's a certain stubbornness in men who live by their own rules, and neither of us was about to back down. We squared off, each with a quarterstaff in hand. Now, I've always been quick with a bow, but this was different. This was a test of strength and skill. We went at it, the sound of wood cracking against wood echoing through the trees. He knocked me into the stream below, and I'll admit, it was a humbling moment. But instead of leaving me there to dry out, John offered his hand and pulled me up. There was no shame in it, just respect between two men who'd found in each other a kindred spirit. From that day on, John was with me, and there wasn't a man in England who didn't feel a bit safer knowing Little John had their back. As time went on, others joined us, men like Will Scarlett, whose quick temper was matched only by his loyalty, Much the miller's son with his quiet strength, and Alan a Dale, the minstrel whose songs could lift the spirits of even the weariest soul. Each had their own reason for joining us, their own story of loss or injustice, but together we were stronger, more than just a band of outlaws. We were brothers, bound by a common cause. It wasn't long before word of our deeds began to spread. The sheriff's men were no match for us in the forest. We knew every inch of Sherwood, every hidden path and secret glade. We struck fast and hard, taking from the rich and giving to those who had nothing. It wasn't just about the gold, though. No, it was about something deeper, restoring a bit of balance in a world that had gone mad with greed. The sheriff, that coward, thought he could outwit us, but he underestimated the cunning of men who've had everything taken from them. I remember the day he announced an archery contest, offering a golden arrow as the prize. It was a trap, plain and simple, a way to draw me out. But I couldn't resist. Archery has always been in my blood, and the thought of showing up the sheriff in front of his own men, well, that was a temptation too sweet to pass up. I went in disguise, of course, dressed as a poor peasant with none the wiser. The contest had narrowed to just the sheriff and me, each of us vying for victory. When it came my turn, I knocked my arrow, took aim, and let it fly. The arrow sang through the air, straight and true, splitting the sheriff's shot right down the middle. The crowd erupted in cheers, and the sheriff's face turned as red as a summer sunset. He knew then and there who had bested him, but before he could order his men to seize me, I was gone, vanished into the crowd, back into the safety of Sherwood. That was just the beginning. Every raid, every strike against the sheriff and his cronies was a message, a reminder that we were still here, that the people of Nottingham weren't alone. The stories spread like wildfire, and soon the name Robin Hood was spoken with hope in every village, and whispered with fear in the halls of the rich. Don't think it was just me. I might have led the charge, but it was the merry men who made it all possible. We fought together, bled together, and shared in every victory and every loss. We weren't just a band of outlaws, we were a family, united by more than just the fight against tyranny. It was about justice, yes, but also about loyalty, friendship, and the belief that even in the darkest times, there's always a light worth fighting for. And so our legend grew, not just in Sherwood but across the land. But I'll tell you this, it's not the gold or the victories I remember most. It's the faces of the people we helped, the ones who had lost hope until we came along. Seeing their smiles, hearing their thanks, that's what kept us going through every danger and every dark night in the forest. Sherwood Forest, with its ancient oaks and hidden glades, has a way of surprising even those who know it best. I was out patrolling the woods, making sure the sheriff's men hadn't dared to venture too deep, when I spotted a figure moving through the trees. At first glance, I took him for a poacher or perhaps a spy in the sheriff's employ. He moved with a confidence that few possess in these woods, and that put me on edge. I crept closer, staying hidden among the shadows, until I could get a better look. He was cloaked, hood drawn low, and there was something about his posture, calm, assured, that made me wary. No one walks through Sherwood like that unless they have a reason. I wasn't about to let this trespass go unchallenged, so I stepped out, bow at the ready. "Hold there, traveller, what business have you in Sherwood?" I called out, my voice firm, expecting to unnerve him. He turned to face me, but instead of offering an explanation, his hand went straight to the hilt of his sword. That told me everything I needed to know. This was no lost soul. I set aside my bow, drawing my own sword to meet the challenge head-on. As soon as our blades met, I realized this was no ordinary fight. He was quick, his strikes precise, and there was a power behind his blows that spoke of a trained hand. But I faced many foes and I held my ground, matching him move for move. The clash of steel rang through the trees as we fought, neither of us willing to give an inch. Then, as we fought, the hood slipped back just enough for me to catch a glimpse of my opponent's face, and that's when I saw the truth. This was no man. She was a woman, though she fought with a skill and ferocity to rival any warrior I'd ever faced. The revelation caught me off guard for only a heartbeat, but I quickly recovered, pressing the attack with renewed vigor. After a long exchange, we both paused, our swords still raised, eyeing each other with a newfound respect. I couldn't help but admire her tenacity and skill, though I wasn't about to show it. "You fight fair?" "It's not often beauty wields a blade so well," I said, a grin tugging at my lips, admiring both her skill and the unexpected turn our encounter had taken. She raised an eyebrow, a playful glint in her eyes as she lowered her sword just a touch.
"Ah, but it seems you've a sharper tongue than blade. Perhaps it's your words that win your fights,"
she quipped, her voice carrying a teasing edge. As we began to part ways, I watched her start to melt back into the shadows of the trees, and a sense of disappointment tugged at me. I couldn't let her disappear just yet, so I called after her, a question lingering on my tongue. "Well then, if my words are as sharp as you say, perhaps they'll earn me the name of the one who gave me such a fight," I called out, hoping to keep her from vanishing into the shadows. She paused, glancing back with a sly grin.
"Names like victories aren't given, they're earned. Perhaps if we should meet again, you'll be quick enough to claim both,"
she replied, her words laced with challenge as she disappeared into the shadows. With that, she turned and disappeared into the depths of Sherwood, leaving me standing there with more questions than answers. I chuckled to myself, intrigued and amused by her sharp wit. She was a puzzle, one I was determined to solve. But as I walked away, a grin tugging at the corner of my mouth, I was certain of one thing: this was far from over. Our paths would cross again, and when they did, I'd be ready, eager to continue the dance we'd begun in the heart of the forest. "Aye, what's that? A horn, sharp and clear. That's not just any signal, that's trouble brewing. The sheriff's men are on the move, and it seems they've decided to pay us a visit." Well, my friend, it looks like our time here is at an end for now. Duty calls, and I've got a few surprises to lay out for our unwelcome guests. But don't worry, I'll be back with more stories to tell, more adventures to share. So until then, keep your ears sharp and your wits sharper. There's always more to the tale in Sherwood, and I'll make sure you hear every word of it. Now I must take my leave. The night's just beginning, and there's mischief afoot. Until we meet again.